What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking another look at the TCL Stylus 5G about 6 months after my original review and going over whether or not it's still a good phone to buy at this point. Now, as far as I know, this phone is only offered through T-Mobile and Metro by T-Mobile, and considering it has been out for over 6 months now, I don't think that's going to change. But since my original review, several other phones have come out on T-Mobile and Metro, like the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, a new Nokia phone, and a couple new T-Mobile Revel phones too. So we're going to be taking another look at this phone's specs and features to give you a better idea of what you can expect if you get it. Now, before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and in case you want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. Now, by far, one of the most impressive things about this phone has to be the display. With this phone, we're getting a really large 6.81-inch IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 385, an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, and a 90.2% screen-to-body ratio. So as far as the size and dimensions go, this is pretty much the best you can get. At 6.81 inches, unless you want to get a tablet or something, you really can't get a larger display than this. So if you're going to be on your phone a lot, you are going to get a real good experience here. With an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, we're also getting a really tall and narrow form factor, so if you're doing something in landscape mode like watching a video or looking at photos, or even when you're playing some games, you'll get a nicer, more cinematic experience, and things are going to be a lot more immersive in general. And then of course, when you're doing your reading, web browsing, social media, stuff like that, with a taller and more narrow form factor like this, you can fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. So yeah, the size and dimensions here are great. And aside from this, the image quality is really good too. With a 1080p resolution, we got a nice sharp image, and the colors, brightness, and even the viewing angles look really good too. This is really not surprising because after all, TCL is primarily a TV company, and they put that same technology in their phone displays. So in general, with pretty much any TCL phone, you can expect the image quality to be at least good. So overall, if you're consuming a lot of content and you're looking for a phone with a really good display, then in this price range, which in case you don't know, is around $250 at full price, this phone is definitely one of the better options. Now for storage, the TCL Stylus 5G is getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so this is definitely a great amount of storage. In this price range, it's kind of hit or miss. I feel like half the phones do have this much storage and the rest only have 64. And on one hand, 64 really isn't terrible. I mean, for the average user, as long as you're mindful of what you're putting on your phone, I feel like you should be at least okay. But of course, 128 being double that size is definitely quite a bit better. So if the storage is more of an important factor for you, then in this price range, the TCL Stylus 5G will be one of the better options. And keep in mind, this phone does have microSD card expansion too. So if you have a bunch of photos and videos and maybe music and stuff like that, you can always offload that stuff onto a microSD card, and that's going to save you a lot of space. Now when it comes to security features, this phone does have face unlock, as well as a fingerprint scanner right here on the power key. So definitely a good spot for a fingerprint scanner. And although in this price range, having both a fingerprint scanner and face unlock is really not uncommon, in fact it's pretty standard. Regardless, it's always going to be a nice thing to have multiple options besides a pin to unlock your phone. But with that being said, let's go ahead and give the fingerprint scanner a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, definitely nice that we get face unlock too. Now for the camera setup, we got a nice looking hole punch design for the front facing camera, definitely one of the better looking designs in this price range. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So as far as features go, this phone has pretty much everything, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera. So if you're taking a lot of pictures and you want a good amount of features, the TCL Stylus 5G is definitely going to be a great option. As far as the photo quality goes, while it's not really the most amazing quality ever, I do think for most people it will be good enough. The pictures definitely don't look bad by any means. It's just if you really want high level professional quality, if you spend a little bit more, you can still do quite a bit better. But in general, if you're really just an average user, taking photos here and there for stuff like social media for example, then in general, I feel like the quality we're getting here is pretty much all you're gonna need. Now if you want to see more photo and video samples, definitely check out my full camera review for this phone, which I will be linking to in the video description. But in general, in this price range, I do think this phone has one of the better cameras you can get. When it comes to RAM and processor, with this phone, we're getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. Now I've seen this processor in quite a few phones, and that's honestly not really a bad thing. For what it is, this is actually a pretty good processor, and the performance we're getting with this phone is definitely not bad at all. Sure, if you're doing really demanding activities, like high performance mobile gaming for example, you are most likely going to want something a bit faster, but for more average daily activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, and more moderate mobile gaming, for anything like that, this phone will absolutely get the job done, and it's definitely not going to feel slow. slow. Now I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on it, and here are the results I got. So again, definitely not a slow phone by any means. In fact, for the average user, although of course a much more expensive phone is going to be a lot faster, I feel like for the things most people do on a smartphone, this is really all you're going to need. But what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of whether or not this phone's going to be a performance upgrade for you, because depending on what you're coming from, it may or may not actually be. But I will say, in my experience, compared to other phones in this price range, while not being the absolute fastest, it's definitely among the better options. Now the TCL Stylus 5G has a 4000 mAh battery that supports 18-watt fast charging, so on one hand, the battery is definitely not bad at all. In fact, for the average user, if you don't need the absolute best battery out there, then it is going to be perfectly fine. That being said though, in this price range, there are lots of phones that have 5000 mAh batteries, so if you are really looking for a phone that has great battery life, then while this phone, again, really isn't bad for what it is, it's still not going to be the best option. Now for the software with this phone, as you can see, we are getting Android 12, which is not bad at all, but keep in mind, I'm not 100% sure if this phone's actually going to get Android 13. There is a good chance that it might eventually, but if having the latest version of Android is really a concern for you, then honestly, this is probably not going to be the phone for you. But if you're not too concerned with having the absolute newest software, but you at least want something decently newer that runs well, in that case, it still won't be a bad option. As far as other features go, of course, as you can tell by the name, the TCL Stylus 5G does in fact have a stylus. Now, compared to something like the Moto G Stylus 5G, I don't think the stylus we're getting here is actually quite as good. It's not exactly as responsive, but for really basic activities like taking handwritten notes and stuff like that, it will at least get the job done. So for a stylus and a phone under $300, it's pretty much as good as you can expect. In addition to this, the TCL Stylus 5G also does have NFC, so if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, you'll be happy to know you can do that with this phone just fine. Now, taking a look at the overall design, I do think it looks really nice. Sure, on one hand, it's nothing really new and exciting, but the quality is really good. I mean, despite being made pretty much entirely of plastic, the materials, while not feeling premium, are really high quality, and the build quality in general is really good. So the phone definitely feels durable, and it has a decent amount of weight to it too. One thing I really like about this phone is that although the display itself is really large, since the bezels are really thin, it's definitely not too bulky either. So overall, if you're looking for a phone that maybe doesn't look or feel premium, but does have a really solid, durable, practical design, I do think you will be happy with this phone. But in conclusion, is the TCL Stylus 5G still worth buying? In general, despite there being plenty of other options out there, I do still feel like in this price range, the TCL Stylus 5G is still one of the better options. For that matter, the only thing I really don't like about this phone is the battery. Because while again, a 4000 mAh battery is not small by any means, I feel like a 5000 mAh battery in this price range is not hard to come by. So if the battery life is really your main priority, then again, you can definitely do better. But other than that, I mean, this phone has a really good display, plenty of storage, a really nice camera setup that does take really good pictures, great performance, a stylus, which is again, something you don't see every day, and NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you're not going to have a problem there either. So in general, if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone that has a good display, good performance, and plenty of features for your basic daily activities, I do think the TCL Stylus 5G is going to be a great option. Now once again, if you want to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the video description where I will be linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Stylus Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.